What's up, gang? It is day 3 of our movement week when we're thinking about really on top of mind is the physical body. Top of mind. Mind is still there. Don't get it wrong. It hasn't gone away. We're building habits. We're building. And today we're tuning in to the body. I want to do a little myth busting or perhaps just help you think about exercise a little bit differently. And I will say with full disclosure that I follow the research in exercise science. And I think this is an important thing to remember when it comes to exercise science and nutrition science. It is a science. And the beauty, truly, with science is that it's ever evolving. We're getting new research all the time and we're learning lots of new things. Okay. So there was a time when it came to exercise science specifically, where many of us personal trainers, group fitness instructors, anybody working in a movement-based field was like, intensity is where it's at, man. It's the jam. Like intensity is the biggest bang for your buck with exercise. And we would talk about this term, which is called EPOC, EPOC, which stands for excess post-exercise oxygen consumption. And more generally known, or perhaps you've heard the term of afterburn. And everyone was like, cool, if I work really hard in my exercise, then especially if I do things like high intensity interval training, the more intense my experience is in exercise, the more of this EPOC or afterburn I'm going to get. So it's that recovery period after exercise where our oxygen levels are elevated still, our consumption, our body's consuming oxygen, and this has to do with our energy systems. And it's essentially, I want to say this essentially because it's more complicated than this, but it's a simplification to say that it's an elevated metabolic rate after exercise. And everyone was like, yeah, I want this. I want to have the afterburn. I want to burn more calories even when I'm not exercising. So if I get up in the morning and I do a high intensity interval training workout, then I'm going to burn more throughout the day. So the purpose of EPOC, that excess post-exercise oxygen consumption, is to restore the body to its resting states and create adaptation. So remember that like our body always wants homeostasis. It wants to come back to its baseline. And when we push the body out of those thresholds in our intense sessions, we start to tell our brain starts to tell our body we need to adapt, which is cool, right? Because we want to build muscle and we perhaps want to get stronger and perhaps want to lose weight or create body composition change or whatever your goals are. Maybe you want to lift heavy things. All of those are good goals. So the main argument is that EPOC is greater after those intense exercises, and when we have greater metabolic rate for longer periods of time, so on and so forth, more of the benefits of adaptation, right? But this can be a little bit overstated. And we're also finding now more and more through the advancements in exercise science that, and we always knew, but we're taking it to the next level. We always knew exercise was stress, right? We need to be careful with the amount of stress that we're putting on our body. And exercise was stress, but there's good stress and bad stress. Or perhaps that's even an oversimplification. It's all in the scope of what your whole day, week, month, year looks like. So at the start of exercise, the anaerobic energy system, so that means without oxygen, will supply the ATP or the amount of energy that we need to do the work. So when we first start, we're not like breathing heavy, right? When I first pick up something, say I start to like, when I first start to run, I'm like, okay, I'm not breathing heavy yet. And I mean like very first start, right? So we have to have some sort of energy to get that started. So that energy exists without oxygen. As we start to move into that exercise or that movement more, where that steady state is reached, the oxidative system starts to kick in. So we need more oxygen. That's why we need to create energy through oxygen. And that becomes the dominant system that's used. And those that are highly trained get to that steady state much quicker than if you're untrained. So the real deal is that the biggest two factors affecting EPOC are intensity and duration. So how hard I work, but also how long I work for. With intensity being the number one for adaptation, but some studies have found that EPOC can last even up to 72 hours, while others have found that it can be much shorter, only a few hours. So there's a lot of contradicting data out there. The large range is because of all these different populations we have. And this has led to sensational claims over the years of like, you know, high intensity interval training is like the only way to get at adaptation. It's not, because intensity and duration have a factor. I'm not saying intensity is bad, but we have to be mindful that everybody is at a different starting point, at a different point in their journey. The take-home message is that interval training is not necessarily far superior to steady state. And you can use EPOC to back up that claim. You'll likely burn the same amount of calories either way. Remember that the biggest driver for body composition change is having a caloric deficit. But in my mind, the most important thing to take away from all of this is that showing up is the most important part when it comes to your workout. The amount of energy that you're consuming makes a big difference. The type of energy that you're consuming is important. The intensity of your exercise matters. The duration of your exercise matters. At the end of the day, doing something is always going to be better than doing nothing. So if you're like, I like walking, do it. I like running on the treadmill, do it. I like going outside, do it. I like playing, do it. I like sports, do it. I like swimming or getting in the water, do it. Don't overthink it. That's my message for you guys today. We have heard so much about high intensity interval training over the past 20 years, probably, honestly. Don't get too caught up in thinking like, if I'm not working intensely, then I'm not doing work. So I want to know from you today, what is your favorite type of movement? It doesn't have to be an exercise. What is the thing that gets you out there and gets you going? If you're not sure, think back to when you were a kid. We all like to play. What was your favorite thing to do? Did you love to run with your friends in the neighborhood? Did you like to ride your bike? I used to rollerblade in my driveway. And maybe that's why I came back to roller skating a little bit later in life. We all have these innate play instincts. We all played when we were children. What was your favorite thing to do then? What is your favorite thing to do now? I want to hear from you. What gets you moving?